Heard your neighbor.
Hold let my wife know. Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the Moscow Board of Adjustments meeting for June 18th. With that, let's get started. I have a question about the agenda. 1 and 3 seem to go hand in hand. And so I'd like to put them together, but I would also like to do them last because they might have some discussion. So I would like to just jump to 2 and then 4 and then do 1 and 3 together.
Yeah.
Yay. All right. So that said, public comment. Is there anybody here tonight that would like to discuss items that are not on this agenda? Seeing none, we're done with that item. So let's go to the conditional use permit application.
Good evening, Chairman and board members. Thank you for being here tonight. Before you tonight, we have a conditional use permit application for 650 North Van Buren Drive. The City of Moscow is proposing the expansion of the city shop facilities. This includes 2 buildings. The first one would be a fully enclosed, single-story, 19,000 square foot building. This would house new repair bays for the city's fleet, parks, and facilities division, as well as some new offices for each division. Building 2 is a storage shed, approximately 4,000 square feet. This storage shed would house dry materials for the streets and facilities department, sand, salt, cold mix, things of that nature. And then additionally, there would be miscellaneous site improvements, repair to the existing city shop, repair and reciting of that building, and then a paved apron for the access and circulation around the new building. I'm sure you're all very familiar with the site, located here just east or west of Polk at the termination of Van Buren Drive. A little bit of background. This property has been used as a public service facility, and it dates back to the 1960s. There's been various conditional use permits and special use permits that have been approved over the years. Most recently, there's a special use permit in 2012 for one of the buildings there. Parkview Estate Subdivision, which is the subdivision that primarily encompasses the city shop, is to the north and the west, and that was platted in 2001 just for a little bit of history there. This is the existing city shop, a few images of that. This is the building that would be recited and repaired to continue its life. This is the location of where the new building is proposed to be. Again, this is a look from the southern side looking north of the property. And this is one of the existing buildings that will remain as well. This proposed site plan, as you all, I'm sure, are familiar, this is the existing city shop building. Houses a number of different departments. Existing buildings here in these 2 corners. Proposed 19,000 square foot addition is here, as well as the additional 4,000 square foot storage shed here. In terms of floor plan, I broke this into 2 separate slides to kind of give you a little bit more detail. What you're looking at here is area A, which is the northernmost portion of the new building. As you can see, there are a number of fabrication areas, welding, mechanical shop, overflow bay. And then here you have a few additional offices, as well as a workstation, a break room, restrooms over here, as well as a locker room. Next, we're going to look at area B, which is the southernmost portion of the building. Here you're going to find, around this side, I know the print is small, so you have wash bays and storage bays, fabrication shops here, and then in the bulk of this area is drive-through automotive services for repair and the city's fleet and machines, as well as a few offices up in the front here, reception area, a training room, and then restroom facilities and break room. This is the elevation of the proposed building. The elevation is roughly between 22 and 32 feet in height at various points of the building. This is area A from the east, north, and west. This is elevation of area B from the south, west, and what's that last corner? East. This is a storage shed. Design of that building, as you can see, it's very minimal, quite basic, just to house those materials that the city utilizes. As you may or may not be aware, this subject property is zoned R4. Within R4, public service facilities do require a conditional use permit, which is what brings us here tonight. As far as zoning is concerned, front setbacks on R4 properties are 15 feet. Street sides requires a 13-foot setback, a side yard setback of 5, and a rear yard setback of 20. The maximum building height in R3 is 35 feet. And the uses, any uses other than dwellings in residential zoning areas require a type A landscape buffer. So recommendation tonight would be, from staff, would be to approve the conditional use permit for the public use facilities located at 650 North Van Buren Street with one condition, and that would be to install the type A landscape buffer adjacent to the R2 zone property along the western property line of the subject property. And in accordance with the board's decision, direct staff to prepare the relevant criteria and standards based upon your decision tonight. And I'd be happy to take any questions you have.
Marshall. I mean, I got a couple of questions. I don't know if Cody, are you going to be the applicant?
Yeah.
I could ask Cody when he's up there, but I guess the first one is on the site plan. Do you know where Hog Creek runs through the existing site?
I don't think the Hog Creek cuts through. You want to? Yeah. This one's probably best. Just one more. There we go. Here's the pointer.
Yeah, roughly comes down here and behind the, it's tiled behind the shop building there.
Okay.
Yep.
So the new building won't affect what's happening with that?
Nope. The new building will actually be elevated a little bit, I think it's about 2 feet. It's about 2 feet above the elevation of the finished floor in the other building. I mean, just didn't bring the video, but there's actually, during peak flow events, water flows through portions of that building. And so
I know.
just the city's ability to provide services, it's important that we have some upgrades there.
Okay. Right. Right there, Cody, then are you going to pave the parking area or?
Yes, we will.
Bless you.
Yes, approximately this darker gray here, approximately that area will be paved. We may trim a little bit of it right here, but a portion of the site to mitigate some of the, dust and things like that. Ease of maintenance will be paved. And then the new, there'll be a small public parking area here that will also be paved for accessibility purposes.
Okay. And are the gas pumps going to stay resumed where they are?
That's correct.
Okay.
Yes.
And I guess the last question I have, are there any activities changing other than what you already do?
None at all. No increase or change in activities. No added staffing that's tied directly to the building. Nothing like that.
Good, thanks.
I got a couple questions. In terms of criteria 1, this is just for clarification, it's a conditional use permitted use, correct?
Correct.
All right. The character of the use hasn't changed, so that one's not an issue. The impact on the neighborhood is, you've addressed that already. The existing utilities, it mentioned in the letter that it's served by upgraded streets, but Morton and Van Buren don't actually have sidewalks and streets. So I wasn't sure what that aspect of it, and it kind of goes into 6. What standards, development standards are required to do the new building?
Are you talking in terms of street improvements?
Right.
There aren't any. When engineering did the review of this, there weren't any required street improvements. I believe the asphalt does terminate there once you
Right.
hit the city shop. So the actual public right-of-way is already improved.
Okay.
So there wouldn't be any necessary public improvements on Van Buren there.
So it's the city's position that the access from Van Buren, off Morton to Van Buren into that, in that little spot on the, what's the southern, well, it's the south side, but it's the bottom corner hand,
Yeah.
that is okay.
Sufficient, yes.
Okay. And then the other question I had to do with the recommendation for the landscape buffer. And this is kind of a twofold question. On the Polk side, which is not the north, it's the east, that is clearly within the right of way or the offset. And I'm assuming that it's because it's that was the special use request?
Yeah, no, so along this side, there were no, I don't believe those are permanent. Those are just, they're
No,
basic.
I'm talking about the
eco-
corner of the existing building. Does that require a landscape buffer or any kind of approval for an existing condition to stay? And the twofold part of my question is, I know it's non-conforming, but if you do repairs and upgrades to it, is that acceptable?
Yeah, typically if something's existing non-conforming, it's allowed to continue.
As long as you don't change it,
Correct.
right?
Yep, as long
Okay.
as you're not expanding on the non-conforming, since that building is non-conforming as far as that setback goes on that side, it just can't be expanded out past that.
Okay.
It's allowed to continue until it's complete, until it's a loss.
So does the landscape buffer come into play on that?
So we've actually, the condition is for the landscape buffer to be installed on this side because that is where the biggest impact is from this particular building. So it'll be all the way across this the western side.
Okay. Any other questions for staff?
I have a question.
Yes.
Did you indicate on one of the elevations that the height would range from 35 to 42 feet? Is that right?
No, I believe it's anywhere from the low end of the building, I think is 22, and the high portion of the building is 32.
Got it.
So it's all well under what the maximum of 35.
Yeah, okay.
Any other questions for staff?
And here.
All right, thank you. And with that, we'll open it up to public hearing. I see four members in the audience. Since the applicant is actually the staff, for anybody who wants to come up and make comments in favor of, against, or neutral, please feel free to come up and state your name and address and say what you came to say. Yes, please. Yep. You need the mic needs to be able to record what you say.
So, my name, I don't speak well. My voice doesn't always work.
That's
right.
fine. Take your time.
My name is Julie Bell, and my address is 615 North Van Buren. In other words, neighbors to the city shop. So, number one, the streets, Van Buren Street, that portion of Van Buren from Morton Street and Morton Street are in terrible condition. In addition, two of the properties, my property and my next door neighbor's property on Van Buren are not paved. There's probably maybe 4 to 6 feet from the edge of our property line out into the street that's gravel. And every winter, there's big potholes in the gravel, marginal plowing of that portion. And my neighbor has taken it upon himself to bring a load of gravel and fill it so the potholes don't become too big. But that's the first concern. The second concern is with all these new offices and with all these repair facilities, it would seem as though the traffic might in fact increase because the big equipment that goes to the repair facilities needs to be repaired, and quite often comes through my street, as well as all the people who work there coming to and from work and to and from their lunch break. So it actually takes a fair amount of traffic on that short portion of street. And that's, even though there's a statement in the plan that says no additional traffic, I've never seen a study done of the traffic on the street. So, Mr. I'm sorry, you.
Just call me Joe.
We
Just call me Joe.
Yeah, brought up a thing about that creek. The maintenance, so there's a huge culvert that
It's
runs
visible.
under the city shop and then has an open drainage on Van Buren that grows quite an expansive crop of cattails and does block that drainage system, usually every really heavy water time. So sometimes that needs a little more attention than it gets. So that's another concern with additional traffic and additional work, especially as construction work commences. So those are my concerns. And it's not that I object to the project, but I do have to live, with the potholes. So.
Thank you. Does anybody else care to come up and make comments?
How you doing? I'm Clint Payton. I live on the west fence there, on Tracy Court. And I actually spoke to Cody, I think about a week ago, and that may be why we're seeing this landscape buffer stuff that I didn't see before. I don't know. But that was my concern when I called him. I was just calling to ask if landscaping had been considered or what the plan was. I actually spoke to a couple people from the city about that, and it seemed like it had not been considered when I initially spoke to people, but that could be wrong. Specifically, what I asked about was, will there be any trees planted? Because to me, we call ourselves a tree city. I would think that we're going to plant some trees when we're redoing a city property. So I know I've certainly considered planting more trees along the fence that's already there. I'm fortunate. I have some of the oldest trees that were planted in those houses. A lot of those houses have no trees at all, and they just back up to the fence with grass. But in addition to and I don't know what a type A landscape buffer means. That's the first time I've heard it, so I'd have to educate myself on that. But
I was looking in my packet for that, Clint. Can
Yeah.
you clarify that?
Yep. So a type A landscape buffer is typically 12 feet wide, 10 feet if it's irrigated. It contains 2 trees, 2 canopy trees, 4 understory trees, and 6 shrubs every 100 feet. So in this situation, that equates to 13 canopy trees, 25 understory trees, and 38 shrubs along that line.
yeah, and that's awesome. That my wife and I were actually. This is my wife, by the way. And she lives there too. We were talking on the way over here, and it's like, we'll go say our piece, and They may say they're going to put landscaping in. I have no idea how you would ever hold anybody to that. Maybe there's a budget cut in a year and the landscape gets cut. I don't know how that works. But, and I'm not, and as far as being for or against this, I'm neither, but I do share some of the suspicions about the use of the property. Because for one thing, that's always been a locked gate right there. So why are you putting in public parking for a place that was previously mostly inaccessible? Who are you expecting to be coming in and parking? That's new on its own. To speak to her drainage issue, anytime you pave something, there's going to be additional runoff. Do we know how many square feet of water that's going to be, in a heavy rain? I have no idea. So things like that, yeah. But overall, I'm not against it, but those are pretty rational considerations. I will say I've owned that house, I think 8 years now, and noise has not really been a big issue. It becomes an issue when there's inclement weather and you've got snowplows working at night, or a lot of times I'm in that facility sandbagging stuff at night when things are flooding around town. And so that activity, it makes noise, but it's pretty rare. But I'm still worried that moving the repair facilities closer to my fence, significantly closer, those may be sounds and noises we've never heard before that are going to be right over the fence in the future. I have no idea how much noise those repair bays normally make. I know we drop a lot of ambulances and fire trucks off at them, but I don't stay around to hear what happens. But I would suggest too, I know a lot of modern projects are doing this, is sound barriers, just in addition to landscaping. Obviously that would be additional cost and we probably don't have the money, but it's still something that a lot of cities are doing. If they put in a city facility in a neighborhood, I mean, you'll see a 20-foot sound barrier that surrounds it. But yeah, I'm definitely concerned about the noises getting closer. And to me, if it really was an upgrade in place project, then you would be building on the same footprint. I mean, what are you going to do with twice as much space if you're not changing the use of the property? Storage would be great. It does look like a big junkyard most of the time right now. So I think that's actually going to be an improvement. The more stuff we can get inside of buildings on the property. But yeah, I think that was pretty much my concerns. But like I said, noise hasn't been an issue, but I have no idea what it'll be. So, but I do appreciate already having some more info on the landscaping. That's awesome. So thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else care to speak? Come on up, state your name and address.
My name is Jerry Reiner, and my address is 445 Morton Street. So when the city vehicles do come out, their lights are pointing right up my house. I'm right across. And I guess I'm just asking a question, why there's access from that south side and sometimes on the east side, those gates are open. And who makes that decision? Why it's been closed for years and then opened again? And how much traffic will come in through Morton and into Van Buren? Is that a question for you? Okay. Joe?
Actually, it's a question that we're going to let the applicant, who is the city, come back up and answer some of these questions, because some of them are in our packet. So I know the landscape one, they've actually self-imposed and addressed. Access, I kind of live in this area, so I'm familiar with the access off of Polk, which is the east side. So
Many times that is closed. And
yeah.
then lately it has been open, but it seems like most of the traffic goes in and out of Van
Could you
Buren.
put up the aerial, which identifies
That
the
would be
roads?
nice.
I'm not as familiar with the roads as it seems like everybody else is.
It's really not a back and forth. It's
Yeah. Yeah, we're just letting you state what you want, and then we'll let him answer questions that are coming up, and then we'll close the public hearing, and then we'll deliberate and tell the city what we think.
Thank you.
You're very welcome.
Mr. Chairman, do you want me to try to address some of the,
Yes, please, because I know that one of the questions that I had was whether or not Van Buren is a fair access route into that space, because it's criteria 6, and so hopefully you can address that.
certainly, so I'll try to touch on the things we heard. First, in terms of access, Van Buren, other than the shoulder near a couple driveways, is completely paved. Access exists there today, as does on Polk. The intent is with the build out of the design that we will focus, we want this, the desire is that gate, and you can see it here, that existing gate over on Polk will be shifted slightly. And so we want to actually minimize some of the heavier equipment and larger vehicles that use the Van Buren access today and concentrate those over on Polk, away from those homes. Smaller vehicles associated with the office, or the rare, we don't see a lot of guests, visitors, but the smaller vehicles would use that access point. We talked about the use of the existing building. If you look at the site, we need a lot of storage as well. So that existing building will be able to accommodate a lot of storage of equipment. Materials that are now outside, we can move those indoors. So from an aesthetic standpoint, we see it as a dramatic improvement, and both to aesthetics and the ability to maintain our equipment. In terms of operations that are occurring there that will be shifted to that new building, the existing building it's really uninsulated. It's not even weather tight. And so really provides no sound buffering. The new building will be an insulated wall panel system, and so will mitigate quite a bit of that noise combined with the landscape buffer that's required. And then finally, we heard a little bit about stormwater runoff, like we would require of any new development. Post-development flows can exceed pre-development flows from the site. And as we look to grade it, we'll actually try to improve some of the ponding and pooling that occurs around that entrance along with the project. So I believe that touches on everything I heard in testimony.
More questions for staff?
Hey, you answered them.
Yep.
When you say you're going to shift the fence on Polk, is that going to mean it's going to square up with public?
When I said we'll shift the gate. Sorry if I misspoke. Right now, the site plan probably shows it. Well, we'll shift the gate to the north. Sorry, I'm making you dizzy, right? There's some material storage here that will shift to the north, and it'll allow us to shift that gate to the north, allowing kind of freer access for some of those larger vehicles to enter there, that at times when it's a challenge are entering here. It's not to say we won't use that access, but the focus will be on the smaller, quieter vehicles there on that southern boundary.
So are you going to abandon the second access on Polk? Because there's 2 gates there.
No, we wouldn't abandon an access. We would really, this is the primary one.
That's going to turn into your primary? Okay.
Yeah, and we'd have to move some of that storage that occurs out there.
Okay.
And then comments in terms of the landscape buffer, we'll obviously hold ourselves accountable to that standard, in full agreement with that condition. And hopefully it's something we might have a unique opportunity to work on that ourselves with our parks crew, but we'll just see. It'll be in place prior to occupancy.
One of the concerns was with the landscaping, it was a new development for Clint, I believe, was feeling like, well, maybe it's an arbitrary thing, and if there wasn't enough money, it just would fall out of the project, and that's certainly not the understanding of how I believe public works projects are. If it's approved, then it's got to be put in.
It's a condition of
Yeah,
approval. We will
right.
absolutely hold ourselves to that condition.
Joe?
Marshall?
I just thought of something. This is a public works project for City of Moscow. Where's your 10% for art going?
That's a good question. We haven't decided. Our arts managers have been engaged throughout the process. I have some ideas that I don't think she cared for too much, but we're looking both inside and outside the building.
Any more questions for staff? All right.
Thank you.
Thank you. with that, we'll close the public hearing.
I forgot two things. I don't know if I'm allowed to go back up there, otherwise she can, but. If you'll,
I will open the public hearing again.
I was gonna,
Wait. The mic won't pick you up back there, so. You sure you don't want to make your wife come up here and make those points?
I don't make my wife do anything.
You're smart.
Good answer.
All right.
Clint Payton again. So I was going to suggest too, I know we do tree vouchers for people for the weed strips. I don't know what else to call those. I call them weed strips in certain neighborhoods. I was wondering if that would be a possibility for people that if their property, abuts these city, it's like to give them vouchers to put trees on their own side of the fence if they want to. I know there's a tree voucher program. I don't know where those funds come from. So it may or may not be possible. That was just a thought. What was the other? Shoot. There was one other thing. But anyway, that was a thought that I had. And I know I'm going to remember the other one as soon as I sit down.
Yeah, you can only come up twice.
I know.
You'll have to send her up for the next
Yeah,
item.
Your wife.
All right. But anyway, that was it. I appreciate it.
You bet. Okay. Public hearing is now closed. I guess to address that last comment, I don't know how the tree voucher thing works either. I know the city will hold themselves accountable for keeping it watered. I don't know. Without implicating my neighbors, one on one side is really good about watering their yard and the other side is not. So I don't know how passing out tree vouchers to you or your neighbors without knowing how well you'll take care of your landscape buffer. But I'm actually less concerned about that. My concern really is the traffic in and out off of Van Buren. Like I said, I live within a couple blocks of this area, so when I go walking and get my footsteps in for the day, I walk past this whole area. Tim, to answer your question, that where the building kind of jogs and goes out, there's a door at the end of that building that goes right out to the fence, and it literally, like the curb cut and the gate is like access to that, almost like a garage door. So I can see why they'd want to move it north because you can't really get in and out. But that street is, in my opinion, a better utility access. It's more of a service to the site because one, Polk is wider. Two, the city improvements on that side, curb and sidewalk, are better, and accessibility in and out would be better than Morton, which is a much narrower street that only has
I don't even know where Morton is
sidewalk
on that.
on.
It's around-
It's a little tiny area right there in the north.
Edge of the screen
Yeah,
going up.
Okay.
there's a little note tag there where it's hatched and it comes
Okay.
in. And the site plan shows a little bit more, but on the northern side of that street, there isn't curb and sidewalk. Well, I take the back, there is curb. There's not sidewalk, but that's because I don't think you could put a sidewalk there because the culvert is actually exposed to the ground. So, which is probably the Hog Creek. I never knew where the culvert came from. I just thought, well, that's odd to see it there. But in terms of all the other things, it's obvious, it's been there. It's clearly a necessity for the city. The existing building is almost useless. So I don't think that we're doubling the size and doubling the capacity. I think we're just making a new to take the place of the old and then using the old for storage. But that's.
Well, Joe, I no longer have a conflict of interest with the city of Moscow, but way back when I was a builder, I worked on the old facility and we tried to remodel it in different places, rearrange it, put shelving from floor to ceiling, and I mean, they were just plain out of room. It was stuffed. And many of the activities were done right out in the parking lot. I mean, that's where they had to do them. So I think there's definitely a need for more storage, and there's definitely a need for, getting those vehicles to a place where they can actually work on them, especially in inclement weather. as far as the increase in traffic, I don't know that the city has that many more public employees out there, or, you might have a little bit more equipment, but I don't think that's really going to change much.
Is there another location that the city has where equipment would come from the other location to this location? So it's gonna be the same
No,
equipment.
it's same equipment.
Over time, I'm sure that accumulation
Just
builds up. to be
as
more
our
as
needs,
population increases in our streets.
Technology changes and things, certainly. But yeah, this isn't to accommodate, a big influx of new equipment, new staff, or anything like that.
Can I ask Cody a question real quick?
Sure.
A few years ago, Cody, there was a plan, and maybe it was more of a plan of the counties than the cities, but the county was going to approach the city about sharing maintenance yard, equipment, storage, that kind of stuff. That's not coming up anymore, is it?
No, it's not.
Well, in terms of traffic coming in off of Van Buren, just based on that current site plan and the parking at that end of the building and the shape of the existing building and the shed that's at the end of it, I don't think the workers there are going to want to bring bigger units in from the south, because you're going to have to come in and around and in between those buildings. So I almost think by the time they shift that gate over on the east side, they're going to find that the flow actually is probably going to be easier in and out of the site, out of the east rather than the south. Whether it was intended or not, I think they're just going to find that to be the case. Comments from this end of the table?
When this place was built in the 60s, what was the development like around it? Was this in the middle of a field all by itself, and all these residential homes have been built since then? Is that?
Yep.
All right.
There's the guy to ask.
I live down the street.
Okay. I mean, there's extra land there and for growth, and it seems like that's why the city has that size parcel. I've been in this building a lot, and it's real tired. I'm glad to see that they have a plan and hopefully the finances to do it, so.
So the only critique I have is Sue Scott and I would like to petition the city to open Hog Creek, because the city has gone on the mission that we trying to daylight as much of that creek as possible. So on behalf of Sue and myself, and I know it won't happen, but
Ready for a motion, Joe?
Yes, if there's no further discussion about any of the 7 criteria.
I'd move approval of the conditional use permit for 650 North Van Buren, and with no conditions, and that we ask staff to prepare our subsequent findings and all the good stuff that goes with it.
Wasn't landscape part of condition?
second.
That's an automatic, isn't that an automatic condition?
No, it is a recommended condition. So if you could remake your motion, including the condition, that would be
I
great.
would
Thank
amend
you.
my motion to include the landscape buffer that's required, the type A buffer that's required, or more if they felt like it.
Second.
I have a motion. I have a second. We'll go down the line. Ivy?
I'm going to abstain from this one because that is my mom.
Now I know why you're being quiet.
Hi, Mom.
Aye.
Aye.
Marshall?
Aye.
Aye.
Doesn't matter, but I actually say no. Just because I think the street going into it isn't the best arterial to get in there, but the motion passes. All right.
Go back, pick up our minutes.
Well, we I don't think your motion included did it?
It did, but I didn't say it. quite.
Okay, all right. Are we
Finally,
good? Do we need to do a
another
motion to have you provide?
Yeah.
I did include that in my motion.
You just
Okay,
didn't use the
okay,
term
gotcha. I just want to
relevant
make sure
criteria.
we didn't leave a loose end there. All right, let's go back to items 1 and 3, which we will now do as the next condition. Okay, the first item for review, comment, and approval is the minutes.
Move to approve.
Without any comment at all.
I didn't have any comment.
See anything wrong? It looked good.
You did a fabulous job of them. Thank you.
I wasn't.
You were here. Ivy?
Oh, you need a second to the motion?
Well, I have a clarification first. NSA is only using the second floor, not the first. I was unclear actually during that whole meeting and even in the minutes. First full paragraph on page 2 says that they're going to use the second floor space. I just want to make sure that that's accurate,
So the first floor space is going to be an art gallery.
right?
The second floor to be occupied by NSA, their administrative offices. So
Okay.
the art gallery is a permitted use within that zoning district.
Right.
It's the upstairs administration offices that were in question.
Okay. Like I said, the minutes are probably fine. I just maybe clarification on the findings of fact. So I have a motion. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
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 Abstain.
Do I have 2 abstains?
Yeah, I'll abstain as well
Okay.
since I wasn't there.
So we have 2 abstentions and 4 ayes, and so the minutes are approved as is. Now we are to the written decision. Comments?
I read through it. I couldn't find any errors. I think it was pretty good representation of what was said.
My concern is there is no reference to the ordinance. There was reference to City Code Title 4, Chapter 3, Section 3.2E and Section 3.4, which I could even find online. I think that was fine. I actually couldn't find the ordinance 2017-07 or 2019 online. It was the ordinance aspect of that was really the question. So this states that we approved that it was a permitted use based on Title 4, Chapter 3, but the real question was, we weren't sure that it wasn't that it was in compliance with the ordinance.
That section is referenced in the last 2 whereas statements in the written decision.
But it doesn't state the ordinance. I actually have it circled in the very
does.
last page. Where at?
So if you read the very last whereas statement on the first page, the board finds the proposed NSA administrative offices on the second floor of the building do not constitute an expansion of the college based on ordinance 1907 and are permitted use under the land use table of Moscow City Code. So that's where we reference the ordinance. And then if you look at the last whereas statement on page 2 of the document, it states, whereas having considered zoning administrator's decision, 2024-02, and having considered the issues presented by the appellant, the board reverses to the decision of the zoning administrator and determines that the proposed administrative offices within the building located at 414 South Main Street would constitute a permitted use under Moscow City Code Title 4, Chapter 3, Section 3.2E and Section 3.4.
Again, and that's where it says permitted based on that code, and 3.4, which is actually the chart,
So
and
that-
CBD, it's blank, so it's
That
left out. So
ordinance and that code is an amendment of that table. So the reference of the ordinance is the reference of the table is referencing back to that ordinance, because
Right.
that's all that ordinance states, is that change to that code.
where I'm going with all this is if the city appeals it, I don't want the city council to send it back to us because they don't know the ordinance and the clarification of, is it expansion or is it office use?
We will include that ordinance 2917. I mean, you can do a records request. That's not a standalone ordinance. That's an ordinance number that was assigned for amending that use table. It's not a standalone isolated ordinance.
Okay.
It was a very specific act by city council to amend the use table. And so that's we're referencing that council action back from 2019. And then that last whereas statement is the specific use table itself.
Okay.
Yeah.
I just want to make sure we had enough information and clarification because this talks about the things that were discussed but not actually said. And I don't want them to send them it back to us because we're not going to get any further than we did the last time.
And the full, I think to be fair on an appeal, the council, it's a full transcript.
Okay.
So if
So look at a much bigger packet.
if in the event it is appealed, yeah, they will
Okay.
have a verbatim
I just-
transcript. So
Okay. Like I
So
said, I
it's
just
not a-
wanted to make sure we
it's not
were a
de novo.
helpful hoop, not just, not a helpful
I'll
hoop.
ask the question after we deal with this.
Okay. Well, do I hear a motion? I need
Move to approve
As is.
and to fix your signature and forward to the city council.
Fair enough. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
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 Opposed? Abstain?
Abstain?
I have 2 abstentions and 4 ayes, and they are approved as noted.
So Amy, have you heard anything in the wind about appealing this decision?
I don't believe a decision's been reached.
What was that?
A decision has not been reached yet whether or not the city wishes to appeal.
I have a question, and it has to do with culpability. In that packet, there was reference to the whole constitutional and are we picking and choosing, not we, the city picking and choosing who they want downtown. It's clear that they don't want the downtown to become a campus, but are they picking and choosing who can and who can't use those services? And so I was actually concerned that 4 volunteers could find themselves in a lawsuit because we didn't know any better, because we didn't know what the ordinance actually meant. We didn't have it in front of us. And so there wasn't a full understanding of what constitutes expansion. And the other thing that was kind of frustrating for me last week was we weren't allowed to bring in new information. And we weren't allowed to talk about item 6, which we did a little bit tonight about it being meeting current standards. And so the question I have is if the gallery on the ground level is a permitted use and if this isn't expansion and it is a permitted use, it's office space by a different user on the second floor, then how does that meet current development standards? Specifically, accessibility. How do you get to the second floor? I don't think,
Mr. Chairman, this wasn't on the agenda to debate that item any further.
I wasn't debating it.
We're on
I'm
a
just,
very slippery slope. In terms of accessibility from a building code standpoint, any sort of work will be reviewed by the building department.
well, we didn't see
ensure
any
compliance.
kind of plans or anything about that. And so it was.
And that question wasn't before you.
Okay.
Well,
Accessibility.
Joe,
yes.
maybe they use the existing building code, not the international.
Which
code.
is true. I didn't mean it to be a debating question. I felt like we were kind of put in a grinder without being able to,
Yeah, it's very unique where you can't expand upon the record. And so the record is what it was, and it was an evaluation of that.
Okay.
Yeah.
Marshall?
Cody, I got another question. How'd you get stuck with this tonight instead of the city engineer?
Oh, no, that was just fine. Broaden my horizons a little bit.
Oh, good.
I move we adjourn.
I'll second that.
Motion made, seconded, all in favor?
All right.
Aye.
Happy Juneteenth.